Great. So this is Kate Johnson. Hi. Yeah. And I'm here with Noemi Aguilar. Sorry, I was trying to make sure we were streaming. And if you can hear me, some of y'all that are watching, I can see if y'all could just chime in and let us know that you can hear us. But I'm here tonight with Naomi, and Noemi, and we are going to, she's going to talk about mostly about how to get our clients ready for tax time. I'll let her introduce herself. I met her this summer and just via this Bookkeeping Side Hustle Facebook group. And she definitely knows her stuff. She's been at this a long time. So first, why don't we just have you introduce yourself, Noemi?
All right. Hi, good, excuse me. Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, wherever you're at in the world, right? My name is Noemi Aguilar. I am a accounting and tax professional. I've been doing this for over 10 years. I focused mainly in individual tax and then grew into bookkeeping, accounting, and just recently, these past 4 years, I've been able to work virtually as a bookkeeper, doing taxes, doing payroll, anything that has to do with it. And I focused on businesses. So I learned individual tax return with my dad, actually, many years when I was a teenager. And then
really?
So my dad is the one who got me into this.
When you were a teenager?
I was a teenager.
Hey, everyone, I actually have an article about start your bookkeeping business with your high school student. So
yes.
Go for it. But keep going. Tell us about your dad. And
this is really interesting because I think this honestly came like even before I was a teenager. I remember I would actually help my dad put the bills in order. So we would do it, I remember, once a month. Back in the days, computers were just new, and we had this huge black filing cabinet. And in that filing cabinet, you'd put the folders, right? Those green folders. And he had one for each bill of the house, and we would sit down and he'd pay them and he'd write on it, paid, and then he'd send them to me, and I was the one who would file them away. So I remember doing that maybe when I was like probably 8 or 9 years old. And I always, instead of playing teacher, I would play secretary. Yeah, so it was really interesting how, I think since then it was kind of like, natural to me to want to do like, anything that had to do with administration or like, house budgeting and stuff like that. And then I had a really, time in my life as a teenager where I wanted to be the rebel, and I wanted to really go against everything my dad was doing. Because he started his tax business over 25 years ago now, and he only did individual tax. And I was like, no, I don't want to study that. I don't want to do that. But he's like, you have to learn something. My thing was I was going to go as a full-time photographer. Like that was what I was going to do. And he was like, well, that's fine. But, this business is always going to be around forever. Like you always have to do taxes. Businesses are always coming up. So he's like, it's a type of business that will always be in demand. And he's like, and photography keeps evolving and changing. So he's like, you don't know where you're going to end up with that. He's like, and it was at the time when phones started to come out, actually. So that's kind of tell you how old I am. And, they started to take pictures. So those were the thing where those, remember, I don't know if you remember those Razor phones, that those were like probably the best quality pictures that you would have. Yep. So he's like, that's all going to change. Everyone can take pictures now. So, I mean, I was just really being a huge rebel with my dad. But since I was like 17, he would sit me down in his office. And he'd say, help me just put the returns together. Like, I need help at least with that. He grew fairly quickly because he's bilingual, and where we live, it's a huge community of bilingual Hispanic community. So he grew very, very quickly, and he needed that administration help. So that's where I went to help him out. And then he also has a construction business. So he's really, really, really smart man. I really love my dad very much, and he's a wise person when it came to that, because during tax time, here in Chicago, it's cold, so you really can't do construction work. And when it's tax time, he's in the office taking care of clients. Tax time is done. The weather is beautiful, so then he goes outside and does construction.
I think that's so neat to hear about y'all, because you're like the photographer plus accountant. That's kind of like left brain, right brain. And then your father, just the inside work versus like the typically more, softer desk, computer type work. I think that's really neat.
Yeah.
Well, So it sounds like you obviously have been doing this for a while. You grew up in it. I do want you to mention that you are helping other people learn how to do this too. So why don't you mention that, and then we're going to get right into the how you help folks like me get my clients ready for tax time.
Yes, of course. So after a while that I worked with my dad, I will never forget the first time he threw me into doing a tax return, where I was like, no, I'm not ready. Like, I wasn't even, I think I was probably a senior in high school. And I was like, no, I'm freaking out. Like, I'm not going to do this tax return. He's like, yes, you are. And you're not going to learn until I put you to do it. And then I was like, super, super scared. So he sat me in front of a client, and he was right behind me, but he's like, okay, this is what you're going to do. Just start taking in the client's information, ask for this, ask for that, analyze the W-2, ask them if they have any 1099s or anything extra. So I was already kind of familiarizing myself with the software, but when he threw me with that client, like live, like literally in front of me, I was like sweating. It was very scary. So when I learned to master, I feel like, I feel pretty confident and comfortable with any kind of personal or individual tax return. I wanted to be a little bit more challenged. And that's where I told my dad, I'm like, I think I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to go back to school. And I was still in school, actually, but I was changing my major now to accounting. And he was like, okay, well, if you want to go out and see if you can work with an accountant that is the business aspect, so you can learn that. He's like, go ahead. Obviously with him, it was only during tax time, so it was only a seasonal job. Okay. So I did that. Like, I don't know. I think it was mostly like the want that I really needed and wanted to learn the business aspect of it. And I know that if I continued going to school, it was going to be helpful. But because the way I learned individual tax, which was on the spot, like right in front of me, I felt that was my best way to learn it as well. Because I was going to school when I changed my major, and everything that was like accounting related was so hard for me, even though I already kind of, had an idea with tax prep. But it was hard for me to understand the debits and credits. And it was so hard for me to understand, accounting basics and stuff like that, because in school, obviously they like teach you, outside of the software to understand it. And It just wouldn't click with me. It was super, super hard. So then I'm like, okay, I need to get myself a job with an accountant so that I can put it into practice as I'm learning it. Okay. And that's what I did. I ended up, I went to my local accountants in my area that had an office, and I just dropped resumes with the hope that somebody would hire me. I didn't have my degree then either, because I was just going to school, and I dropped a couple resumes around. And there was one guy that his firm, he's had it for over now almost 40 years. And he just came to me and said, oh, like literally when I went to take him the resume, it was him and his wife and his nephew, and then one additional girl that was working with them. And literally on that spot, he interviewed me, and he was like, oh, so individual tax. I'm like, yeah, I've been doing this for a while. I feel confident in that. He's like, what about, payroll liabilities and taxes and bookkeeping and stuff? I was like, honestly, I'm clueless in that. Like, I have no idea. I know basic administration of a business. I'm like, but I don't know QuickBooks. I don't know, anything related to bookkeeping. He's like, but you're going to school for it, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm studying it. He's like, yeah, but school's not going to teach you what the field is going to teach you. So I was like, oh, okay. So he hired me, and he was like, okay, you'll start next week. I was like, really? Like I, to me, was super surprised, because I didn't have a degree, and it was like, I never thought that I would be able to get a job without a degree. And I'm sure my pay rate at that time obviously was super, super little, but to me it was like, score, right? Because I'm going to get taught how to do all this stuff while I'm getting paid. So I learned with him anything that had to do with bookkeeping, payroll, sales tax, business administration. Like, I literally learned so much from him. Within a year, the girl that was training me, she ended up quitting because she started her family. So I was the one working there. And then he's like, okay, he's like, are you still working on your degree? And I said, yeah, I'm still working on it. He's like, well, he's like, what are your plans with that degree? And I said, well, I don't know. I think, just to have my degree as an accountant and that's it. And then he was like, okay, well, you've already learned everything you need to learn pretty much. He's like, you're already doing what an accountant is doing. He's like, so I'll just leave it up to you if you want to pay me what you're paying the school. So I thought that was so hilarious because it really kind of put into perspective, what was really being taught at school. And I don't want to ever put anyone, in any kind of negativity or anything. To me, seeking knowledge and going to school, if you can do that, oh my gosh, go and do it. That's awesome. But I think by that time I was a mother of 2, which made it super hard for me to go to school, go to work, take care of my family, and still have some sanity for me. So that is what, honestly, working with him, I actually ended up withdrawing from my degree. I'm probably like less than a year or approximately around a year away from getting my degree, but it's just been super hard for me to get back to my degree. But I feel that my experience has outweighed what my purpose would be to go back to school. And I don't ever plan to work for anybody, which is why I don't have to prove my degree to anyone. And,
right.
If I get it done, I'll get it done. And that'll be probably just like a self-accomplishment kind of thing. But the fact that I've been able to, be a registered tax preparer, I'm in the process of becoming an enrolled agent. I've been able to represent clients, business clients with IRS audits, state audits, and they have never asked for my degree, like ever. So I've never felt, the obligation to have to finish my degree as of now. I just continue to seek knowledge. I continue to learn and brush up on tax law, and I'm always taking CPE credit courses because I need to have them for my P10. And all of that just really triggered down to why it is that I'm doing now and going to what I do and teach bookkeeping. Because to me, it was such a huge passion to be home with my family and to be able to be there for them. But I still wanted to feel fulfilled professionally. And I've always liked to study and work. I've been doing that forever. So it was kind of hard to just like be home and not do anything. And in a sense, it was kind of like a self-gratitude thing also, knowing that I can continue to learn and I can continue to help my home financially. And I came across a lot of women that were looking for that too. And over the summer, I was working with a business coach who was like, well, why don't you just teach what you already know? And I'm like, who's going to want to learn from me? Like, I don't know. So, we came together with the idea over the summer. Up until right now, I'm still creating the course. It's like, I want to say 90% done. I should be done hopefully by the end of this month. It's been a challenge because it's something completely new, like getting used to Facebook groups. Like I've never done this before. Just in the last maybe 8 months, I've been doing Facebook, social media and all that stuff, networking, and it's pretty amazing.
Awesome. And the name of your course is Mama Counts, right? So you focus on moms. And whenever things get more fleshed out, and in the spring, whenever you and I both have more time, we'll bring you to talk about that course. But why don't we dive into getting folks ready for taxes?
Yes.
So here's my first question. What advice do you have for a bookkeeper like myself that doesn't do taxes to be sure that I'm ready to pass my clients off to someone else? And then I got another question for you for people who are trying to do both for like your efficiencies. But for someone like me, let's answer that. How can I have 3 more weeks till the end of the year. Shoot, not even that long. What do I need to be doing?
All right. So for what you need to do for your clients, and this is also going to help, to make sure that they are prepared when they go to their tax preparer or their accountant or CPA, whoever they're going with. You want to make sure that this month of December, right, you're tying in all the loose ends of anything, that was left open. Sometimes, any kind of cash expenses that they probably haven't gotten to you. So you can do those journal entries to input at the end of the year. Depreciation on their assets that they've purchased throughout the year. Maybe major purchases that they've done, sometimes maybe buildings or vehicles or equipment, that has that value. Putting in that depreciation, you can do that for the end of the year. In December is usually kind of when I put it in, like on the last month, the last day of December is kind of when I go in and put that in.
Okay, time out. I have a question on that already. So do some bookkeepers opt not to do that and let the accountants do that portion? So how do you navigate that? Because I feel like that's the core, I took Bookkeeper Business Launch, and I feel like we're taught about depreciation and how to do it. But my instinct would be that there's a lot of people who say, oh, let the accountant make that call. So navigate that for us.
Yeah, so I think in that case, for example, if you're not either comfortable with it, I think you definitely want to have that communication then with whoever they're going to go work with what accountants or what tax preparer they're working with, because you want to make sure that so like in a sense, you're kind of working with the accountant. So that way the accountant is going to know what they're looking for, because I know sometimes we're going to work really hard to get those books done. And then if you never have communication with the accountants can go through that profit and loss sheet and be like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And then like kind of throws you off completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So I mean, if there's like that journal entries or depreciation stuff that you're not ready for the end of the year, I would ask your clients, say, I want to make sure that the reports are ready for your tax preparer or accountant or CPA. Do you mind giving me their contact information so that I can, just make sure that if there's anything that is needed on my end.
Okay. Okay.
If not, I would just, I know QuickBooks Desktop. I'm a QuickBooks Desktop lover, and I know you can put in like notifications and notes in there.
Okay.
That way, if the accountant or the CPA is going to get into the books, they have that come up, and it's like that communication. I think QuickBooks Online should have it as well.
There's a note section. Yeah, I mean, you could even probably just almost form like a cover letter that you ask the client to submit to with like narrating what you've done, if there was any questions. But yeah. Okay, all right. So if there was any, asking the client for any transactions that were not in the bank feeds, I guess, and then right. Like those cash expenses, and then depreciation. So what else?
Yeah. So one of the other things as well, like sometimes when clients do like major purchases of a vehicle, let's say, right, you'll see that transaction in their bank feeds, but you don't get that interest amount or those other tax fees and stuff like that actually come on that bill of sale, like for a vehicle. So that is something that you also want to make sure that you are reviewing with the clients. If they have it as a purchase right out, or even if they have it as like a liability, then I'm sure obviously you would have caught on to that and have to put it in as a liability, but you don't always put in like the whole picture of it, and you're missing out on a tax deduction of interest. You're missing out on the tax deduction of like, what are those like fees, document fees and stuff like that.
So is your practice to kind of wait till the end, kind of with an end of year mindset for that sort of thing, versus if they make that purchase in July, just trying to get it? I mean,
definitely get it once you see it, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I know there's times when, like I said, didn't we just talk over the summer and it's December already?
Exactly. True. And I have a client, sometimes clients don't do what you tell them, and then once December comes around, then their mind starts to turn on like, oh no. I have a client who's still supposed to pay himself back for some and it's sitting on the balance sheet as like payable to owner, and I tell him every month, it's $83.70 or like whatever. Because it's kind of meaningless, but in the grand scheme, but it still needs to be tidied up. Okay, so what else?
So also, and I'm sure this is something that I remember I saw a comment on it not too long ago in the group about the W-9s and 1099s.
Yes.
So I know that is something huge that even as a bookkeeper, obviously, you're probably just handling finances, but I think it's super important as a bookkeeper that we know how to tell that to the client, because we're seeing that in their bank statements, especially if they're issuing a check or if they're doing a transfer to somebody that is not their owner or the shareholder or whatnot. You need to make sure that, okay, what was the purpose of that? Was it for a subcontractor? Was it for a temporary employee or whatever it was? Not temporary employee, I'm sorry. For someone that was there just temporary, or, what was that amount for? So always remember, when it's over $600, we have to issue those 1099s for them. So we need to make sure we have those out by January 31st. So I always like to tell my clients, okay, and this is sometimes hard because I know they're like eager to just issue the check and just, you know, get it out the way. But the dilemma with that is like, if you never see that person again and you paid that person $2,000 and you didn't collect the W-9 from them, that is the issue, trying to hunt them down right now, you know, around this time to get that form.
All right, so help me navigate that. So I'm a bookkeeper. I have a client. He has four 1099s that are going to need to be issued, and I have three W-9s.
Mm-hmm.
And walk me through the different scenarios. So let's say, is it my job to try to contact that person? Do
No.
you take that on yourself? Do you give what's the best way to get it? And then what happens when if they ultimately say, I'm not going to try to do that? What do I need to do as a bookkeeper if I know that he needs to issue 4, but I only have info for 3?
So as a bookkeeper, definitely you don't need to reach out to that person. That is the owner's job and responsibility to do that.
Okay.
You need to make sure you're on your client so that you can get that information. But definitely there will be times that, you know, those people just will never, although they'll be like, you know, I've tried my best to contact them and I've had no success. So one of the things that I've noticed per the IRS, because they'll ask right away for those forms if they're not properly filed and anything, and they'll ask you to start withholding. But obviously, if you're not working with them anymore, you're kind of like, ugh, you know. So this might be something where I think every accountant or CPA might have kind of like a different approach, but then and again, it's kind of like the same thing in a way, where if you can't gather that information, most importantly, like the social security number or EIN number of the person.
Mm-hmm.
Now remember, you issue a 1099 to a sole prop or an LLC, corporations are excluded from that.
Okay.
Corporations and partnerships, if I'm not mistaken, those are excluded from it. So you don't have to issue that to them. Just like, you know, if you paid someone to repair, you know, the window of your business and you paid $800, you know, that's the person you would have to do.
Or a bookkeeper, right?
Or a bookkeeper, yes, definitely. You as bookkeepers, you know, if you're a sole proprietor, and which is I think a lot of the majority kind of like how we all start, or an LLC, yes, you need to make sure that you are getting that 1099 from your clients, because that's something how you report on your taxes as well.
But so they don't give it to us. Do we tell the client to just document the fact that he tried his hardest?
Right.
Or
so
is there like
scenario? Yes. If for example, going back to, you know, your client can't get a hold of that person. So definitely have documentation of it. Sometimes I know, you know, if you can get at least the name of the person, you know, a record of how many checks was issued to them. And if somehow maybe there might be an address, because that's kind of the things that they ask, the name, the address, and the EIN number and a signature. Or any kind of proof that you either emailed them or texted them, or, you know, calls that we can get kind of like a log. And this is just kind of like, you know, in an extreme scenario, because if you can't report that 1099, then the business can't take the deduction for it. And then that puts you, you know, with almost $2,000, let's say, for example, that the business is not going to be able to deduct because they couldn't issue that 1099. So there's been situations where I've just issued the 1099 based on the name and address of the person or the LLC. And if I don't have the EIN number, I think electronically they won't let you do it, but I'll send it in through mail. And then I will attach like the proof that we've tried to get in contact with them. And a lot
like
of the
literal snail mail, like with the stamp, like
Yep.
IRS in Washington, D.C. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because that protects you. That
and then you can take the deduction. Then you can keep that in your profit and loss for what your net income is. Okay.
Yeah, because it'll be worse, and I've seen it happen where, you know, that they put in, you know, all the 1099s that they issued, but when you mail those in or you e-file them and there's no proof attached to it, you're going to get a letter from the IRS like a couple months later. They don't even let a year go by. Like literally it'll be like a couple months later saying, you know, this letter that looks really intimidating, and your client is going to freak out and they're going to be like, why am I getting asked for this? Because either, and this happens too, like for example, if they give you the wrong EIN number or the wrong social security number. So when you receive those letters, like, you know, it's kind of like, well, what do I do? And those letters are a lot of times just kind of like a warning from the IRS saying, hey, you know, you're reporting this person and they don't have a correct EIN number, or there was no EIN number. You need to gather proofs, or you need to, you know, withhold for them in case, you know, they're still working with you, or, you know, have as much record as you can to protect the client from taking that deduction and making sure that the IRS won't disallow it.
All right, so difference between bookkeeper, what I call myself, and then the CPA filing the taxes. How do we navigate? So like last year, I charged several of my clients for doing 1099s. It was my first time to ever do it. I felt like I did it successfully. It wasn't a huge burden, and I charged for it because I was kind of through, you know, social media groups. I kind of like, what do I charge? But I did it. But I'm guessing there are some situations where you kind of have the client has to decide, are they going to ask me to do their 1099s, or do you have some people that you work with who you're their bookkeeper, but you're not preparing their 1099s, or is that pretty much a married relationship where the bookkeeper is going to do the 1099s, not the CPA?
Yeah, I would definitely always have that in that initial agreement onboarding when you do your client. Part of a service that you're going to offer, that, you know, you will include those with them, because that way they're aware of it. And definitely always, you know, if you want to include it into their monthly fee, you know, just divide approximately, but it's kind of hard because you really don't know how many they might have. So that'll just be something that maybe, you know, you put in as, oh, it's an additional charge depending on 1099s at the end of the year and the 1096. But I think issuing those forms with what a bookkeeper does definitely goes hand on hand. Because, you know, you're the one going through their bank statement. The CPA and accountants might not. They're just going to analyze the reports.
All right. So for the folks, y'all listening to this, my own personal takeaways is, so I think for my engagement letters, whenever I have a smaller business that hasn't ramped up to 10, well, maybe I'm not thinking about it. Like, I'm not putting language in my engagement letters about my 1099 pricing. The way it's always come up is it's gotten to that time of year, like last year, I've done this one year. I've gotten to that time of year and I say, do you want me to do this? And they say, yes, how much? And I say, this much. But you're saying that I could even kind of start that with additional services would be this, and I'm guessing as my practice grows that I'll have several different types of additional services that I'll be able to say, here's what we're charging for now, but if you need me to do this, this, and this, but the other kind of like additional things. Okay, so that's one takeaway that I'm taking. And then the other one is guys, keep this 1099 hat on, and you have to keep it on throughout the year. So don't think of 1099 time as just January. You need, every time the transaction comes through to like an individual, you know, it's not the phone bill or not the internet bill or whatever, like, whoa, okay, this is interesting. Who's this guy? Who are they paying? Who's this gal? Who are they paying? And figure that out. And you'll need to be thinking about that in March when you see that bill come through, because you're going to need to deal with it 10 months later. So those are my takeaways, because you're saying that it really does need to be our job. Don't think of that as something that, oh, like I don't do taxes, so I don't do 1099. I don't do taxes, y'all, and I'm going to be more diligent about letting people know that the 1099 is my job. I mean, it is my job. I did it last year, but I'm going to put that a little bit higher focus on communicating that with my clients.
Yeah, and I think that even gives you the ability to, present yourself with the client with more kind of like a package deal kind of thing that can definitely attract those clients that, oh, I can go to her for this and this and this and that, you know? So I know some bookkeepers do payroll, some of them don't. So, even with issuing payroll, you can either outsource it as a wholesale with somebody, or, you can run it through QuickBooks, and you can, find that as an additional service that you can charge for. The way I like to see it as bookkeepers, yes, we can definitely just keep ourselves as like, analyzing bank feeds, transactions, and inputting in the system, and that's it. But I think you're really how can I say it? I'm trying to find the right words. You're not allowing yourself, to make that extra income on services if you're just limiting yourself to just bookkeeping.
Great. I want to go back. You said the word payroll in the last minute. So I think that's 1099s and contractors, that's really a different animal than payroll.
Yeah.
And so how does that affect year-end tax time, or does it? What steps need to be done if we have a client on with payroll?
So
and I don't do payroll. I have an outsourced payroll, and so both, either whether we're doing our own payroll or whether we're outsourcing, what do we as bookkeepers need to prep for that December 31st time?
So even if you're outsourcing it, like I have an agent that I outsource my payroll for my clients with. So I'm still kind of like the front end to my clients as the payroll person, but I outsource that to someone else to do it for me. But they still have to get me, their quarterly reports. I still need to know how much liabilities they're paying, because I need to input that in their bank feeds and all that. So that way they can have those deductions for payroll, how much payroll was at the end, and that is something also that by December, quarterly reports aren't due until January. So you need to make sure that even though by December, you'll probably end up putting a journal entry in January for December for what was the total of payroll, if it's being outsourced. But if you're the one doing it, obviously you're seeing that already in your bank feeds and all that. So it starts to get, accommodated accordingly too.
But is it pretty separate from the tax returns, the business and personal tax returns that are submitted? And is it really just an expense of the company? Is that the only way it affects the tax return?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's an expense to the business for sure. The payroll and the liabilities and all that. So yeah, I mean, that'll go in separately, and those W-2s will go to the owner or the shareholder or whoever, or even, I don't want to mention, like the K-1s, but that's tax purposes already. Like that's the tax preparer doing it. But the W-2.
I guess what I'm asking is, so I have a client that's on Gusto and I set him up.
Okay.
What do I need? So I'm going to try to I'm trying to look good for my client on January 1st. I mean, not really, but early in January, give him the information that he needs. Do I need to get something from Gusto as a part of my year-end package to my client saying, here's what you need to take to your CPA? What payroll, what is that payroll document that I would need to give?
Okay, so definitely for your year-end, you're going to want to look for that 940 form. The 940 federal form is going to give you like the whole picture of their payroll for the whole year. And I'm not so familiar with Gusto, but I'm sure they issue those because those are actually sent in on the fourth quarter. So in January, and that is going to give you, it's a federal form 940 that allows you to see the total payroll. Okay. And all the liabilities and all that, Social Security, Medicare. That's only for federal though. And for the state, depending where you're at, then you're going to have to also either get if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's the 941 for the states. They might have different names. I hope not, depending on the state. I'm in Illinois, so I know they're called 941s, which also gives you kind of like the whole picture of it for sure.
And when am I going to get that year-end wrap-up report from Gusto? Not until the end of January?
Well, when they report the quarterly reports for the fourth quarter. So I don't know, if Gusto is good that the last payroll in December, they automate those reports, then, you should probably have it right away in the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they seem good to me. And so, all right, y'all, this is huge. So these are the things we need to be asking from our payroll providers, because I'm always only going to outsource payroll. And so these are great
to do that.
great tips. And now I know what to look for. I would imagine Gusto would have probably been pretty proactive about giving those documents, but I want to make it as easy as possible where my client doesn't have to think about it at all. Chelsea's asking the form numbers, Noemi. She says 944. It's 940. And then 941.
So it also actually depends, because there is a 944 from the federal.
Oh, okay.
There's so many numbers, and I try to keep up with these form names. Here, let me research real quick, because there is a 944 for the federal, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that's just for certain type of businesses. Okay.
You're good. Take your time. There's no reason. That's
sure.
That's what Google's for. We don't have to have this all memorized.
Like, let me just make sure I'm telling you guys the right forms, because yes. Okay, so yeah, the 940 is for the annual federal unemployment tax. Yes, I'm so sorry. So I'm mistaken it. The 940 is for the unemployment, federal unemployment, which is the FUTA. And the 944 is what gives you the total payroll. So yes, Chelsea is right. I'm so sorry. I mixed up those two numbers.
Hey, I totally get it. I mean, yeah, again, because we just need to know what we need to be looking for. We don't have to have it all memorized.
Yes.
So
yes, the 940. Cool. Yes. So the 944 is the one that you're going to be looking for their total payroll.
Got it.
And yeah, and the 940 is for the federal unemployment. So that's something separate.
So any other advice for someone like me who's not going to be doing taxes to get their clients ready for tax time?
I would honestly also just, definitely if you can get in contact or in communication with the client's CPA, accountant, or tax preparer, or even if you can have that connection with somebody, not necessarily your client's preparer or person, will definitely help you to make sure that if you're missing anything, that you're gonna know what you need to adjust on the books. Because, for example, even when the tax preparer or the CPA or accountant is doing their taxes, for example, the meals and entertainment one, on the profit and loss that we show, a lot of the times, we put in the total amount because that's what's coming from their bank account. But in reality, it's only up to 50% certain allowable deductions of meals. So then that's something you're going to have to go back and adjust on their books as well so that it's matching.
Okay, so how do we adjust it? I mean, the business spent the money, like as a bookkeeper, we want the actual expenses, right? Like we're not trying to match our books to the tax return.
Right. No, but just always be aware, because I know sometimes, well, at least it ticks me off because I'm doing the report and then I'm doing the taxes, and then it's like, why is it not coming out to the same number that I have in the profit and loss? And then I'm like, oh, duh, because of the meals, which is a big reason why.
but we don't ask for that tax return and take a look at what is on the meals and then somehow erase 50% of that figure.
So that just like let the client be aware of it, that even though that this profit and loss shows this amount, it might be more or it might be less, depending how much the tax preparer CPA will take off, especially for those meals and entertainment. We'll probably show more of a profit, obviously.
So meals and entertainment. So I have a client, he goes out to eat a lot. And one of my mentors, essentially, that has kind of taught me something, and I actually subcontract for him. He just puts everything, because he doesn't even have receipts. He puts everything to a category called meals. And in my mind, I'm thinking, what he's going to do is he's not going to get into the nitty gritty of this. He's just going to axe it all by 50% and not try to nitpick through every receipt. Like, is that like really the workflow that CPAs do when they see something called meal? Are they looking at the actual details of that, or is it going to be like, okay, they spent $2,000 in meals, axe it in half, it's 1,000, that's it?
So it's definitely always going to depend, like the type of business that is running through, like what kind of business. Because like, for example, like let's say us bookkeepers, right? If we are putting like $4,000 in meals as a bookkeeper, the IRS is going to be like, really? Like you spent that much on what? On meals, on yourself, or how,
I really wine and dine my clients.
Right? I mean, hey, you can say that, I guess, but like, for example, I have construction clients who are, they're always out working, and they, buy meals for their workers, or they go out of town because they're working out of town. Obviously, if you're expensing almost $6,000 or $7,000 in meals, and obviously the revenue is also, kind of like, I want to say, kind of like a certain almost percentage of how their revenue looks and the type of business. I honestly, unless you want to go through receipts, I hate going through receipts. So I honestly even just want to make sure that, okay, if it makes sense what you're spending on, then that's fine. Let it be, you know. But if you see like you know, a business that's maybe making, you know, 100 grand in revenue and is like $10,000 in meals, you're gonna be like, whoa, what's going on there, you know?
Okay. Okay.
Just also be aware, entertainment is completely disqualified. So it's like,
Right.
they're trying to, you know, it's actually became so detailed of what they can or cannot take. I remember over the summer, I was at the IRS seminar here in Chicago, and they were talking about that. And one of the CPAs was like, well, do you guys really think I'm going to start figuring out how much coffee I'm like providing my clients during tax time or stuff like that? Like, I'm not going to, you know, go down to that level of trying to figure out exactly what percentage was for my business and what percentage was for me. They're like, no, you know, obviously be realistic with it. And when you see a heavy load of meals, depending the type of business, I would so question it for sure.
Okay. Jamie asked the question about as far as your journal entries are concerned, are there any more needed than depreciation and payroll? Are there end of year payroll journal entries besides just a typical journal entry?
Yeah, like if you're not doing their payroll, I'm sure at the end of the year, you're probably putting in a general entry for the total amount that was, well, no, because you'd see that on the bank statements. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the other thing that could be actually, because there are some S corps or corporations that take like a huge payroll check at the end of the year.
Right.
So that they only do like a one payroll a year kind of thing. So I mean, that'll be something that I'm sure their accountant would advise them in doing. So I wouldn't suggest for you to be like, oh, you know, take this amount or that amount if you're not working with them to that level. So I would leave that either to the discretion of the CPA or accountant, you know, to guide them in that sense. And then just whatever they take, obviously you're going to see it on their bank statement, and just make sure that you are putting it in accordingly as well.
All right. Dasmine asks, should all meals be left on the profit and loss statement, or should 50% be reclassified to owner's draw? I know the answer, but I'll let you answer.
I honestly, I wouldn't let it, you know, again, just because it's probably going to give you a little bit more headache to want to start doing all that. You can you can, because you'll be able to see it on the profit. I mean, it can go either way, honestly, I think. Or what would be your response?
So I think you just leave it all, because that's going to be a lot of extra work. Doesn't mean you just leave it all on there. And again, I think it's more informative for the business owner to be able to see on the profit and loss statement what did I spend on meals. If you start to split all that out, then it's going to show up on the balance sheet, and it's going to, you know, be an owner's draw, and it's going to be a big hodgepodge number. But they need to know, like, well, I ate out a lot this year. I might need to start going to like Chipotle instead of
that is very true, because actually when I actually do go over these statements with my clients, and I show them, and they'll sometimes be so surprised. They're like, what, I spent that much on food? I'm like, yeah. It adds up. No, but I agree what you said. I would literally just leave it as is, and then, you know, just have that adjusted by the accountant or the tax preparer.
Hold on, I have a guess.
Something went wrong.
Y'all are gonna have to give me about 5 more minutes.
Sorry.
That's my kids, y'all.
Yeah, no, my daughter opened the room.
A new one.
He doesn't have a shirt on. You're on TV, but for a lot of people. I want to get to.
I get it.
Yeah.
I love it.
The TV is their babysitter tonight because my husband's out of town. Let me ask you a question. So you're someone who also does taxes, right?
Yeah.
So there are other people in this group that are probably trying to do a bookkeeping and tax business. So can you give like top 2 tips if you're going to do both? What are your like efficiency tips for someone who's coming at it from the mentality, I'm this business's bookkeeper and their tax preparer? What do you have to say to those people to get themselves ready to not die in the spring?
Definitely, if you are already overloaded with bookkeeping clients, I would definitely outsource during tax time bookkeeping so you can focus on the tax returns.
Oh.
Because believe it or not, it's like, this is the way I mentally prepare myself. Like January, I focus on making sure that like I have my quarterlies out of here, which is why I actually ended up outsourcing payroll, because that was like a big thing for me, getting quarterlies done in January. The 1099s, the W-2s. So for me, January was like tying and having everything loose ends put together for my clients, anything that needs to be put in, but quarterlies, but 1099s, but W-2s, and it was a lot. Plus bookkeeping jobs starting in January. So February, I focused on my business clients' tax return, and then March and April, I focus on the individual tax returns, and whoever I don't get to, I just put them on extension.
Hold on. So February, you do what?
Business returns. So the corporations and S corps, because they're due by March
30. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. That's a good workflow. So business first, personal next. How do you decide amongst, you got your stack of clients. What client goes first? First in line, first who gets to their stuff, your favorite? How do you pick?
So this is funny because I've been doing this for a couple of years. So I know the clients that are like, I want my tax return right away. And those are the ones that I want to make sure that I get them done like as early February as possible, because they want their taxes done right away. So so it's like, I think I've gotten to learn my clients and who needs what. And anyone that is new, honestly, even if it's a bookkeeping job, I do not like start their books. And I tell them, I'm like, okay, I can do this, but I can start until this day, because I've been growing with taxes, and I am growing a lot with business taxes. So along with the business tax, obviously comes the individual aspects of it. And my bookkeeping have actually hired on another bookkeeper virtually as well. And she's gonna, I told her, I already prepared her since last month. I'm like, starting January, February, March, I am not gonna know about books. You're gonna take care of it. She's like, yeah, that's fine, and I think being able to take that kind of like weight off of me so that I can focus on just tax returns is gonna keep me sane for sure.
So is she someone that is just wanting seasonal work too? Is she just gonna do bookkeeping during tax season, and then she's gonna go do, or are you gonna have her on your
she's one of the persons that I'm kind of gonna start working with more throughout the year for sure.
Okay.
So she's been helping me with, because I'm not gonna lie, like just literally this year that I started to promote myself online, I've grown and I've like doubled in bookkeeping clients, in tax returns. And it's pretty crazy, honestly. Like I never imagined to be able to get to this point. It is, and it's like exciting, but then again, it's like scary, because I would tell my husband, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is going big, like this is going to a next level kind of thing. But I like it. It's exciting for sure. And the fact that I was able to promote myself that way, just by being online and connecting and networking, is how I've grown. So which is why I brought this other girl on with me. And I said to her, look, she's my subcontractor. So she's like, okay, I know you're still going to get your own jobs. You're going to get your own books. And but if I can take my business to that level of a firm and have multiple bookkeepers, I'm just going to work on getting clients and just outsource it to them.
That's awesome. So just to summarize my takeaways from that question, y'all, those of you who are doing business bookkeeping and taxes, she doesn't do bookkeeping personally when it's tax season. So figure out a way to find help so you can focus on the taxes. And then the other thing she said was start with business and get those taxes done in February, and then do the personal returns after. So yeah, those are my two.
Have like a system flowing for sure.
That's great. There's people here in this group that are listening right now that no taxes and no bookkeeping, and they want to do both. And so I think that tip is going to be great for them, because they're probably thinking like, okay, I said I'd do taxes, now how am I actually going to do them?
No, and it's really interesting though, because like obviously you're going to know how much work you can take on. And I think that's something super important as bookkeepers, that we know that if we're going to add an additional service, that we're prepared for that workload as well. Because we're sometimes so excited, obviously, right, to get clients, but then and if you're like, for example, me, I'm working from home. The reason why I'm doing it is because, you know, once my kids get out of school, like my whole life revolves around them. you know, like right now, I don't know if you hear, like there's a bunch of noise going on because they're all home.
I can't hear, and mine just came in shirtless to my webinar. So
yeah. So it's like,
I get it.
We're leaving out of town tomorrow morning for a whole week. So they're packing,
Wow.
and they have music going on. I hear my husband with a vacuum, and I'm like, okay, guys, can I just get through this, please?
Nice. Well, yeah. Actually, so we probably should. I have another question. What last one?
Yeah.
Is any big mistakes in your experience, even going maybe back to when you were doing it with your dad when you were a teenager, but mistakes that bookkeepers have made in trying to have their clients ready for tax time that we can avoid?
Yes, most definitely. Giving an answer that you're not sure about. I am a big person of like, if I cannot give you a correct answer right away, I'm not going to make it up, or I'm not going to like, you know, tell you, oh yeah, you can do this and this. I prefer to tell the client, you know, let me do some further digging on this. Let me connect with my network of professionals, and let me get back to you. Because I do not like to give an answer that later on will be more confusing to them. Because I think what we tell our clients, they're going to trust us so much, and they trust the fact that, you know, if I tell my client, oh yeah, you can take that deduction, but then the tax preparer is like, no, you can't, you know, who's going to look bad? Me. And they're going to argument that with their tax preparer. So then that's going to cause a conflict. And I think that immediately kind of just puts you in a spot with your client of kind of like, well, why did you tell me, kind of thing.
Okay. Any other big mistakes?
Not having their books up to date, I think. And I'm actually sometimes guilty on that, because I have a client that they have a lot of work that gets done. So it's hard to like, you know, be on there all the time because I have other clients. But definitely giving yourself that time to make sure that you are available to get them caught up to date before the end of the year. Any transactions that need to be done, always have that confidence and that trust and communication with your clients to make sure that they are, communicating the type of things that they're doing. So that way, when you see it in their bank statement, it's not a huge surprise.
Awesome. Tell us where folks can find out more about you. I know you're in our Facebook group, and her name, y'all, is spelled Noemi. If you start typing that, it'll jump up, and you can tag her. She's been active in the group and great, and it's people like her who are experienced that help people like me who are just starting to build their business. So, but how can we find you besides in our Facebook group?
So, I mean, you guys can send me a friend request. I'm always really open. I love, because I have been taught to do the things that I do. I think like that's my kind of model, that if I can continue to teach others as well, I want to make sure I can do that. You can find me on there. If you want to join I have a private group as well. It is a mama group, but that's probably one of the easiest ways also to have access to me, because I'm starting to get like hundreds of thousands of DMs on my personal, and sometimes it's hard to keep up with it. So like, I'm trying to like, you know, I'm trying not to respond on my private message and just have my VA who just responds of like, you know, have an email here and an email there. But you can always catch me on my private group. Send me a DM. If not, I mean, I'm more than open to give out my email. I have no issue with that.
Do you want to say what your private group is, or not?
Well, if you don't mind.
That's fine. You can. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So the private group is called Mama Counts Bookkeeping Community.
Mama, M-A-M-A?
M-A-M-A, Counts, C-O-U-N-T. You can kind of see it back here.
Oh, Mama Counts. Okay. One word or two?
One word. Mama Counts has one word. Yes. And then Bookkeeping Community. Again, it is a growing community. And it's like, you know, I have many women in there, especially again, because that's what I'm trying to teach. But you know, the other day, my brother, he's like, you're being very sexist because you don't want to.
Well, hey, tell your brother he can come On Monday night, we're talking with Michael Lee about men in bookkeeping. So tell him to come on over.
The funny thing is all my bookkeeping businesses and clients are men.
Yeah.
So
hey, Noemi, there are 2 questions on the right side, one from Christina and one from Chelsea, but I actually am gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna wrap this up, and if you don't mind trying to respond to them. We've been on a while, and I want to keep this shorter, and the little 3 are the TV apparently quit working, so they
time
don't
goes by fast anyways. I know
it's like been an hour. Thank you so much, y'all. I hope this was enjoyable. If you appreciate the work here at Bookkeeping Side Hustle, don't forget that you can go to bookkeepingsidehustle.com/support to find ways to just show your support. A lot of it's free. And tonight, I would like to ask you to follow me on Twitter. I just made a Twitter account, and so I'm trying to be cool, and it's at Bookkeeping Side, If anyone wants to follow me on Twitter and then maybe teach me how to use it, that would be great. And thank you so much for telling us. I took some great tips away. I'm excited. I had clients I've been doing this for 2 years, but I would say this is the year I've really kind of focused, because all 3 of my kids are in school now. And so I definitely have some year-end work to do. And so this was clutch. I really appreciate it.
Perfect. No, and I'm glad I could be a resource. And again, even if you post questions on the group, I'm sure I'll be able to see them, tag me on it. I'll do my best to respond. There is a lot of really knowledgeable people too that are in taxes and stuff on the group. So definitely I think is great. And if you're seeking taxes, do it, because you can offer such an amazing package to your clients when that comes around.
All right, I'm going to sign off. They're knocking again. All right, bye everyone. Have a great night. Bye.